Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Wisconsin Lawyers Mutual Insurance Company's 2024 inaugural Free CLE Friday session. We're thrilled to provide valuable continuing legal education to our policyholders. Today marks the first of 4 sessions aimed at enhancing your knowledge and skills in ethics and risk management. Our program is titled To Bot or Not to Bot, Ethical and Other Considerations in Digital Marketing and Advertising for Lawyers. My name is Matt Beyer. I am the Senior Vice President of WILMIC. I am delighted to introduce our guest speaker for today's session. Joining me is Lindsay Marty. Lindsay is the founder of Above the Bar Marketing. She is a seasoned expert in legal marketing strategies who will offer you a very impressive and comprehensive presentation of different forms of digital marketing. She's the true expert here as advertising and marketing goes, and I'll do my best to offer you some general guidance on the ethical rules that apply to these situations. A special welcome also to our guests from the Wisconsin Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, commonly known as WACTL, along with their newly appointed Executive Director, Bobby Peterson. We appreciate your participation today and hope you find this program worthwhile and meaningful. Today's course will focus on the application of Supreme Court rules of professional conduct related to advertising and marketing. Specifically, we'll review 20:SCR 7.1 through 7.5. That'll be the less entertaining portion, which I have the responsibility for. But we'll also take a look at a few other regulations when lawyers engage in advertising and marketing. Our aim is to provide you with comprehensive guidance, at least as it goes to navigating the complex landscape of legal advertising and marketing while ensuring compliance with ethical standards. We hope to give you actionable insights, and I think that's where you're going to benefit from Lindsay's presence here, so that she can correct me whenever I speak incorrectly about different parts of digital marketing. There's a lot going on. I think I hesitate to say this phrase too quickly, but AI, artificial intelligence, it sort of sucks all the air out of the room, and people can't help but talk about just that. But there's a whole lot to it. One, we're already using a lot of artificial intelligence, and two, it really is making things more effective, efficient, and sometimes scary in the way of presentation of digital materials. So we'll leave some time. As a virtual seminar, you will have access to the Q&A function of Zoom. And I think that's the best way for you to submit your questions. We will leave some time at the end, depending on the number of questions that we get, to do our best to answer those. And then finally, I'm pleased to announce that this course has been approved by the Board of Bar Examiners for 1 CLE ethics credit. When you report your CLEs, you can locate this course on the Board of Bar Examiners website. It'll be under our name, Wisconsin Lawyers Mutual Insurance Company, and it will be categorized as a live webinar. So once again, welcome to Free CLE Fridays with WILMIC as we approach this awesome St. Patrick's Day weekend. Let's get started. So I mentioned a little bit about digital marketing and advertising, and Lindsay, feel free to chime in at any point while I give a very brief introduction. But as we look at page 1 of the outline, we do have, an understanding, I think, that most consumers are using, the internets or the interwebs, or however you want to incorrectly refer to it. But they're using search engines and other tools to figure out what they want to do as far as hiring a lawyer or doing any sort of consumer legal research, that sort of thing. And there's a ton of information out there, and it's difficult. I think folks like Google and others are doing a great deal to try and drive people correctly. In other words, where are they located? Are they in Madison, Wisconsin? Are they in Milwaukee, Wisconsin? Those sorts of things, I think, all have an impact in how effective a consumer's search is. And so how can you, as a lawyer or a law firm, start to leverage some of those tools out there to be able to drive people to you, so that you can continue your business model and be successful in that way. I think the telephone is still my preferred mode of communication, but I don't think we can ignore things like Zoom and Teams anymore. I think those are becoming more and more familiar for sure. And I think some would describe, and probably correctly, that the appearance of those things in general day-to-day life is one of the silver linings that the pandemic created. So simply put, digital marketing is the use of digital or internet channels, such as websites, apps, mobile devices, social media, search engines, all of those things. They certainly do have an impact on not just marketing, but really all walks of life these days. And the general bullet points here, Lindsay will get into in much more detail in just a bit. But these are all the types of things that I was mentioning that are available to you as a business, as a law firm, to be able to figure out how to drive traffic your way. So I don't want to delve too much into that because we have an expert here who will cover it, and I'm going to jump right into the rules. So as far as advertising and marketing go, the main rules that you need to be concerned about are 20:7.1 to 7.5. And the 7.1 rule is one of those that, it might as well say the sky is blue, right? One, don't lie. And I think more importantly, be careful about misleading. Saying something, even though it's technically true, and I have the example there of, advertising a free consultation if you only offer 5 minutes, but then charge for anything longer, and your average consultation is 30 minutes, that may be misleading. And I have an article there from CLEO. CLEO is a very valuable resource. I think many of you solo and small firm lawyers are probably using it, maybe even others. But I think they do have a good article there about lawyer advertising rules that you need to know. And certainly 7.1 is pretty common, one that's referred to in most articles or even programs like this, where we talk about just being honest in your advertising. I shudder at the phrase, "Well, this is a slam dunk." And so I put it in there because there really is no case that is a slam dunk. And you certainly can't cheat. Again, the sky is blue. And so, suggesting to a client, that you may have a way or an in or a contact, that you could use or leverage or manipulate into achieving a desired result of your client is not something that is consistent with these rules, this rule in particular. Testimonials, I think whether it's in the form of a Google review or a static testimonial that appears on a website, are extremely valuable. I know that even when I do something as simple as shopping on Amazon, one of the first things that I take a look at are consumer reviews. It just gives a little more honest insight, a little more plain insight into what exactly somebody was looking for. Is that similar to what my interests are, and what was their impression of the result they got? But be careful not to pay for those, in any way, shape, or form. And offering a discount for services is paying for it. So if you take $50 off your bill, in exchange for a testimonial, I think that's something that would run afoul of this rule. I then have a list of don'ts from the ABA, the American Bar Association. I think some of these phrases you'll recognize as things that have been used in the past, and the ABA and other ethics, the ethics branch of the ABA and others would find these things, violative of this rule, saying that you are the top firm, the cheapest, or the best in the area. I think those things are misleading. And again, don't imply that you can guarantee a case win. Nothing is a slam dunk, once again, or any sort of settlement. Examples of past case successes, I think, are pretty commonplace, but they shouldn't go too far. And so if they are viewed as guaranteeing similar outcomes, I think you may want to consider a disclaimer, like the past success does not guarantee similar results or something like that. Specialization in a certain field of law, we'll talk more about practice areas in a little bit, and that does become important because from a legal malpractice context, the holding yourself out as a specialist may raise the bar as far as what you need to demonstrate it may raise the bar as to a duty that is owed by a lawyer to a client. And I'll talk more in detail about that in just a minute or two. Board certification, that has to be something that is recognized either by the ABA or the state in which you practice. So by all means, you've worked hard to get that board certification. If it is one of those that has the criteria and the certification that is what it is. You can't say that you are if you aren't, and you can't say that you are something that isn't something that's recognized by either the state bar or the ABA. Your years of experience or the number of clients you've served inaccurately. I think that one goes without saying, but there it is. That's one of the useful tips from the ABA. And then don't use language that implies that victims visiting your site must contact a lawyer. Visitors should never feel that the law compels them to seek representation. I think the simple phrase of "you need a lawyer if you're in this situation" is what they're after there. They may or may not, but you can't know that unless and until there's actually a consultation that's had. Okay, referrals I think are also very commonplace. But if we focus in there on 7.2b, a lawyer shall not give anything of value to a person for recommending the lawyer's services except that a lawyer may. And there's the list of things that you can do to be able to secure and establish your referral network. And advertising, I think is a form of communication. Usually when WILMIC is talking about communication, we're talking about communication between the attorney and the client, and that is governed by SCR 20:1.4. But pay attention to other pieces of this, that matter when you are engaged in referring. And I certainly don't want to read all of these rules to you. I think that doesn't make for a very good presentation, but I am going to move through these relatively quickly. And again, if you have questions about specific rules, please feel free to put those in the Q&A and we will get to them. Okay, solicitation of clients. So I have down at the bottom of this rule the difference between attorney advertising and attorney solicitation. Again, from CLEO, attorney advertising is a communication about a lawyer or a law firm's available services. Attorney solicitation is an advertisement made by a lawyer or law firm that is targeted to a specific person or group, which may be unethical. I think this is where the unfortunate phrase of ambulance chasing may come into play, so that when you find out accident reports or other information, and sort of advertisements or flyers or communications are sent out en masse, those are things that have very specific rules attached to them, and when they are sent, they simply need, well, not simply, they do need to be properly filed, I guess, with when a lawyer uses standard form solicitations that are mailed to many prospective clients. The lawyer satisfies the filing in subparagraph C by filing one copy of each version of the solicitation form with the Office of Lawyer Regulation. Always a good idea, of course, whenever you have an ethical concern about something related to advertising, to run it by the true experts. And I would encourage you before filing anything with OLR, or in conjunction or at the same simultaneously with filing something with OLR, that you give a call to Tim Pierce, or the Aviva Kaiser is no longer there, but the new ethics counsel at the state bar. I think you'll get some good guidance from them about what exactly to do when you go about sending materials en masse. Okay. Communication of fields of practice. I think this is very, very commonplace. Obviously, again, when we talk about what areas of practice you engage in, WILMIC usually talks about competence 20:1.1, where it's not necessarily in your best interest to dabble. Most of the claims, not most, but many of the claims that we see come in areas of practice or fields of practice where lawyers have very little experience. And the converse of that is also true, where fewer claims come in areas of law in which the lawyer practices more than 50%. So be aware that it's an important part of marketing. Certainly somebody who is looking for an attorney wants to know that you are in an area of practice that actually is relevant to what they're looking for, and will translate well into effective representation of them. I have a note in here: words do matter, although likely acceptable to refer to being focused on an area of law. Be sure to only state that you are an expert or a specialist if you actually have that proper accreditation. And I do have a case in there. It's Duffy Law versus Tank Transport. And this came up. WILMIC doesn't try very many cases, but we have in the last year had a handful of them. And it was interesting. In that particular case, we felt that we had an insured who did not hold himself out as an expert. They just said that they focus on, I'm just going to use a random category, mergers and acquisitions. Well, when the jury saw the website, that said that they focus on mergers and acquisitions, the jury reached the conclusion that yes, indeed, this lawyer was holding himself out as an expert in that area. And I don't really know if the jury was sophisticated enough. We can't know, right? Because we don't know the deliberations. But if they heightened the duty owed by that lawyer to his client because he was holding himself out as a specialist. We disagreed with that conclusion, but it doesn't matter. I think it just is important to remember that if you aren't an expert in a particular area, the safest way is to offer, and you don't want to be concerned about this particular raising of the bar, so to speak, in the duty owed to a client. Be careful with what language you use to convey that you are practicing in a particular practice area. Okay, and then 7.5 has to do with firm names and letterheads. Important to note that a firm may be designated by the names of all or some of its members and by the names of its deceased members, where there has been a continuing succession. But be careful not to include folks when they are not associated with the firm, or they are a predecessor of the firm, or the name of a non-lawyer. This is where I think using a celebrity, it's important that they not be included in your letterhead to give the false impression that they are in fact part of the firm. Okay, and I realize I'm moving through this relatively quickly, but I do want to give Lindsay quite a bit of time to talk about how all of the digital marketing elements get put in place, and I will start to talk about. I'll jump in during her presentation to talk about some of the rest of these rules, but do be aware that the establishment of an attorney-client relationship can happen relatively easily, and any doubt about whether a client-lawyer relationship exists needs to be clarified by the lawyer in writing. So think about this in terms of the least sophisticated consumer. If they've had a conversation with you, are they going to turn around and tell their friend, yeah, I got a lawyer? If they do, then it hasn't been made clear to them that, no formal retainer agreement has been reached. We haven't talked about scope of services, everything else. All they did was, enter the chat bot and have a brief conversation with somebody or nobody, and just artificial intelligence. But is that enough to create an attorney-client relationship? Need to be aware of that and make sure that you have proper disclaimers where they need to be, indicating that no attorney-client relationship exists unless and until it actually does. And that is an obligation on you. And that's in a comment to SCR 20:1.3. You'll find that there. Okay, confidentiality is always a concern. We talk about this quite a bit in our artificial intelligence chat GPT program. And it's important. This is sort of, I equate AI with, the elevator conversation or the cocktail hour representation, on steroids, where you think that you're conveying just very vanilla information or hypothetical information. But if you put enough facts into a chat GPT, for example, you may offer too much, and you may actually disclose enough for someone else to conclude, oh, I know exactly what they're talking about. I know exactly who that's about. Something like that. You do have a duty of confidentiality, and you do need to be able, you need to be aware of the confidentiality provisions in everything that you do, including your advertising and your marketing efforts. And that is something that doesn't go away simply because you're in a different forum. And then finally, responsibilities regarding non-lawyer assistance. In my mind, this was always about, what paralegals you hire, and whether you hire a private investigator. Do you have obligations regarding those people, actual people? And indeed, you do. But the comment, to 5.3 and Aviva Kaiser's comments here in her article, extend that to your use of any sort of platform, like ChatGPT or AI or digital marketing efforts, whatever it is. The responsibility never goes away with you as the lawyer, and that's just the best way that you can, I think, address that is to have policies and procedures in place so that those that work for your firm, both in and outside of your firm, are aware, that these kinds of things can happen, and to make sure that they're doing it the right way. I will let Lindsay talk more about ADA compliance, and I think this is a good opportunity to hand this over to Lindsay and let her share her screen, and I will chime in with additional ethical considerations as she goes through her presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I will hand this over to Lindsay. Lindsay, if you could, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Well, hello, everybody. Again, I'm Lindsay Marty, owner of Above the Bar Marketing. Our headquarters are here in Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you for having me. I am going to take a lot of all of what Matt just talked about and put it in sort of term, like sort of a digital marketing 101. So you can kind of understand the basics of digital marketing. And then Matt will obviously chime in with some ethical considerations to take note of as I go through it. So I developed this analogy recently because I wanted to find a way to accurately explain digital marketing for law firms in a really simple to understand way, all the different parts and how they all fit together. So building your digital strategy is similar to building a house. Obviously, first you start with the plan. You build out a plan. Maybe you work with your law partners, or you have a marketing partner that you work with to figure out what your plan is, what your overall brand message is going to be, what your logo and your colors and fonts are going to be. and what your goal is with the marketing. That's always really important to, what is your overall goal? Is it more referrals? Is it more, clients from the internet? What is the overall goal? And crafting that mission statement. That's really the blueprint, of starting and establishing your digital presence. Then you lay the foundation, which is the website. And I will kind of dive right into that on the next slide here. Actually, so you build the foundation, and then comes the walls, and then the roof, and then you can start putting in the windows and doing the trim and doing the gardening and building a front porch, but it all comes in steps. And so it's important to think about that when you're thinking about your overall strategy. If you're just starting your firm, or you're just starting to kind of rebrand or think about marketing in general for your firm, is starting with that plan, and you can't do it all at once. It comes in steps. So there's really two different types of digital marketing buckets, if you will. One is the lead nurturing. That's more of the website design, social media content building, branding, video, podcasts, reputation management, reviews. That's all kind of one bucket. And to put these two in another analogy, lead nurturing and branding is more like boiling water and making pasta. So if you're like with branding, it doesn't happen overnight. Building a website and getting it to show up with SEO, it doesn't happen overnight. You're going to first add water to the pot, then you need to boil it. It takes a while to boil. Then you add the noodles. You have to wait till they get soft. And then you drain the water. So it takes more time to nurture that process before you can enjoy your pasta. Where lead gen, it's what we call the light switch technique in the industry. That typically you turn on the light and the leads come in. So lead gen techniques that we typically handle the most with our clients are PPC, which is pay-per-click, Google Ads. It's all the same thing. Local service ads, legal directories. SEO can really be a bit of both lead gen and branding, and then your local presence. And I'll get into each of these buckets in a little bit more detail in a minute. Oh, the other way. Okay. So the foundation of the website, obviously you want it to be beautiful. You want it to portray your message. You want it to be aesthetically pleasing. But I broke this down into kind of 4 different buckets that are sort of our basics to help our clients understand what's the most important when building that foundation. Because you want to build a foundation that's strong, right? You don't want to put up a one-pager from Squarespace and hope that it's going to hold up all of the walls and the roof of your house. If you're looking to build this foundation, to build all your marketing around it, you want to make sure you build a really strong foundation. And at the core, you can really break this down into 4 things to keep in mind. Mobile responsiveness is obviously key. I mean, Google announced several years ago that they're indexing the mobile version of websites before the desktop now. So it's even more important from a search engine optimization value that your site just has to be responsive and it has to be fast. You will actually be less likely to show up if your site is slower and is not mobilely responsive. And it's just from a user standpoint, it's frustrating because especially if somebody's in trouble, like they just got in a car accident or they just got arrested, they're going to 9 times out of 10 be searching on their phone for an attorney because they're in trouble, they need somebody, and they're going to search on their phone. So making sure that they're able to, read all the information is super important. Security, obviously building your site with security, having it on a secure host, and platform, updating, any plugins on a regular basis is crucial. Making sure you put it behind a firewall. All of those things are super important, obviously, to make sure your website doesn't crash. But also, again, Google, this was 5 or 6 years ago, the whole switch to HTTPS, they announced that, for a year that this was coming and that they were going to stop basically showing sites that weren't secure. And now it's true. You can't even 99% of the time, if a site isn't on HTTPS, you cannot enter the site. It'll give you a warning sign before you enter, and most people will not move forward after that. So obviously security is super important. I put WordPress here. It's not a must. You can build sites on other platforms like Drupal or Joomla that, can perform really well. The reason why the majority of the internet builds their sites on WordPress is because of the usability, and it's the best for search engine optimization. With our clients in particular, we provide access to their WordPress so that because it is pretty simple to be able to add simple content and things of that nature to a WordPress site. So there's tons of, the sky's the limit in terms of the amount of plugins and the way that you can connect WordPress sites to other software or technology that you're using as well. For us as the lead gen company, conversion is crucial. So what I mean by conversion is when somebody comes to your website, a potential client, there should be ample opportunity for them to get in touch with you. So that means having the phone number placed in the right areas, like the top right-hand corner, in the middle of the screen, having having a contact form on every single page. Chat is a huge thing now. We've partnered with several different chat companies that offer like lots of different cool things, but a big thing with chat now is adding video to your chat, introducing yourself before somebody fills out the chat. There's lots of different AI chat bots that are coming across the table. So all of those things really matter because the goal of the site really is to provide information for your clients, show them why you're the best, and then eventually get them to call you and hire you.
And Lindsay, if I could chime in for just a second, when we talk about, and this is on page 7 of my outline, the inquiries from a website visitor about legal advice or representation may raise an issue concerning the application of Rule 1.18. So as you implement these pieces, into your digital marketing plan, just be aware that Rule 1.18 protects the confidentiality of potential clients. They haven't, by the time they've reached your website any of these tools that invite communication, just be aware that, as I mentioned earlier, you do have the responsibility as the lawyer of monitoring those communications to be sure that they are done in a responsible way, and one that protects the confidentiality of the person communicating with you through the website, but also doesn't establish an attorney-client relationship when you don't want one.
Absolutely. And speaking of, responding to these inquiries, another thing that Google is really starting to showcase more, and you'll start to see it, is the firm's response time, and they will give authority to those firms that respond to potential clients faster. It actually will say typically responds in 1 minute or typically responds in a half hour, things of that nature. So Matt touched on ADA compliance. I'm sure he'll chime in here also. So in terms of ADA compliance, at its core, it's really giving access to anybody that may have disabilities or any type of viewer to be able to view your website in the way that works best for them. So this has started to roll out really in the last couple of years, the importance of it. There have been a couple of cases involving ADA compliance with larger corporations being sued because their website wasn't built for people with disabilities. So I strongly encourage you to think about this if you're building a site or adding. We at Above the Bar, we have an ADA compliance partner, and it's a simple plugin. So you can find these plugins, add them to the site, and it makes the site ADA compliant. I strongly encourage you to move in this direction sooner rather than later, because eventually I see the same thing happening where Google wanted all sites to be secure. All sites will have to be ADA compliant. My guess is in the next 2 years. And the same thing will happen when you enter the site. It won't display the information unless it's ADA compliant.
Yeah, you bet. And this one struck me. If you see on Lindsay's slide there, the very first one talks about a seizure safe profile. That's very special to me because I have a family member who has epilepsy, and it didn't. We often get the warning before we sit down to watch a movie as a family, that this may have flashing lights or something that could and has triggered seizures in those folks who do suffer from that. So I think the best way to think about ADA compliance is, even if ADA doesn't apply to you, because those who practice in this area have a better understanding than I do about what the scope and the application of the ADA is, and it may not apply to every small business. It's nonetheless important to consider who's actually your audience. In my trial advocacy, course, ages ago that I took, we were taught in court, to listen with many ears, listen with the jury's ears, listen with the judge's ears, listen with opposing counsel's ears, the witness's ears. Same here. When you're creating websites, when you're creating tools to invite communication, be aware of who those are that are using your site. And this just makes sense, I think, for those who do have different abilities to be able to access your site in the same way that anybody else would. And just one quick note, on page 8 and 9, I do have a site to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, which talks about a website being perceivable, being operable, being understandable, and being robust. And then there's an article there from Business News Daily that talks a little bit more in depth about whether or not your website is ADA compliant. Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay, so the foundation has been built, now the walls, and building content, again, takes time. There's several different types of content at its core that are important. Obviously, website content. We break this down into, the pages of the site and the structure of the site. But building out, your home page, your About Us page, your practice area pages should be really full of rich content. This is really what makes you the expert in your area, is providing really quality content. And also, the search engines are more likely to pick up those pages and display you as the expert if you have more information and more content on those pages. Blogs are important because Google really likes to see you adding content to your site on a regular basis. They like what they call fresh content on your site. And so adding that fresh content basically updates the site. And also, blogs are more likely to show for those long-tailed searches. So long-tailed searches would be something like my wife wants to move, or my ex-wife wants to move out of state with my child. What are my parental rights? So that would, or my custody rights or whatever, but that's where blogs might be, you know, if somebody has a blog specific to that topic and answering those questions on the site, that's where blogs are really, really valuable in pulling your site up for those longer tailed searches, which are much more popular than they ever were, especially because of voice search. Social media, obviously you can, I always recommend posting all your blogs to social media. Social media is a whole beast of its own that I'll dive into. But with content writing and building those walls for your house, it's really important to remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of your content should be educational, inspirational, providing value to your clients, potential clients. And then the other 20% can be bragging about yourself and talking about how you're the best and why. I find it too often where we have a brand new client and they're like, I've never had engagement on social media. And I'm like, well, yeah, because that's all you're doing is talking about yourself. You're not potentially helping anybody in any way with the content you're putting out there. So I just really encourage, if you're just diving into the content game, to really think about that. Like, how can I actually provide value to my clients and write it in a way that they will understand? That's also so important. Lawyers really get in their head. I feel like a lot of times with content, like, well, this isn't professional sounding enough. And it is not written for you. It is not written for your law partners. It is written for your potential clients so they can understand. So just remember the 80-20 rule. Blog, website content, I already kind of went through this. Social media, again, I've done whole hour-long presentations just on social media, but this is really where you can display your branding message, your personality. You can be goofy if you want, depending on the nature of your firm. But the goal of social media is to engage. So, you know, instead of just posting what is this law or what, you know, post about the firm, post about the fundraiser that you're doing at the school, post, you know, interesting things that your clients may not know. You'll get a lot more engagement that way. And all my years in digital marketing for law firms, unless you're like a large mass tort firm, I would strongly encourage you not to think of social media as a lead generation tool. It's a branding tool. It's how can I stay in the forefront of my clients and potential clients' mind, and how can I provide them valuable information? So bringing this all together, the plumbing and the wiring, what's in the walls, making all of this work, putting the lights on and getting all the water to go where it needs to go. That's what search engine optimization is. So at its core, it's the art and science of making your website more visible and attractive to search engines like Google. All of the things I already talked about play into SEO, search engine optimization. The website, the content, social media, reviews, everything has a part in making the website more authoritative in Google's eyes. And again, I know that was a broad overview, but with respect for time, if anybody has questions, please let me know. The front porch. So think of your Google business profile as your storefront online. So this is one of the most important, especially if you're just starting your firm or just starting to market. The most important thing you can do is optimize your Google business profile. You claim it, it's free. Here's a few tips, and I will send this flyer out afterwards. So it's just a really nice tutorial and showing you exactly what you need to do to start optimizing your profile. The biggest thing here is going to be reviews, getting reviews and getting them often, and posting. Adding your services and products, all of that stuff is important. But if you can remember two things from this, this is by far the largest area of free leads, if you will, is getting reviews on here and posting here.
Lindsay, if I could interrupt here briefly, I think it's important both from a review perspective, but also on your Google business profile, but also in social media. What happens and what sort of guidance and recommendations do you have when there are negative reviews? You mentioned that reviews are beneficial and generate free leads. I think that's very, very true when they're good. But what about negative reviews? And before you comment, let me just offer this cautionary note to our audience, and it shows up on page 10 of the outline under social media, and that is that remember 20:1.6 and confidentiality, so that when you do respond to reviews, positive or negative, that you not disclose any confidential attorney-client information. You have to go through some pretty large hoops, to get informed consent from your client to be able to talk about anything related to their representation, your representation of them. But just understand that some lawyers have been disciplined because they didn't have that consent or that authorization, and they responded to reviews, and in so doing, divulged some information that they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing in response to reviews is it's important. Google loves when you utilize their products in any way. So respond to all reviews, good or bad. Be vague. Respond on behalf of the firm as a whole instead of an individual attorney. And show empathy if the situation didn't turn out in their favor. Obviously, do not divulge any information. Be as vague as you can in your response. Like, I really enjoyed working with you. I'm so sorry that you didn't have a good turnout, or that, you're unhappy with the how the case turned out, or what, I mean, I wouldn't even mention case. But if you have serious questions about, most attorneys don't know how to respond to negative reviews. First, if you feel that it's a fake review, or it's not even somebody that you represented. So we get this a lot with our family law attorneys. It's like the spouse's sister of the person you're representing, and they're leaving a negative review, and you didn't even know them or represent them. You can contact Google and let them know and appeal it. I would say 8 times out of 10 they won't take it down, but sometimes they do. Otherwise, I would respond and say, I know that I didn't represent you, or say something vague in that matter, that this wasn't a client that you represented.
I would just add one thing, and that is I think it may be advisable, and I'm curious about your thoughts, but it may be advisable to have a stock answer. So that when there is a negative review, it's one that is disclaimed if it needs to be, or just includes a general response that isn't one that would reveal any sort of particular information. Because I think the further you get into the weeds, the closer you come to violating, the confidentiality provisions that you must meet in order to preserve your relationship with your client.
If you have any questions, though, when I speak on reputation management, I always recommend reach out to Tim Pierce. He'll review it and give you the go ahead, or his, feedback on whether or not you should do it. Your marketing team can definitely help draft those, but it should be written by you and approved by, somebody, at the state bar. The other thing, and just in terms of reputation management, the nuts and bolts of it are generating more reviews, monitoring them, so making sure that you stay on top of it, responding to them like we just discussed, and then consistently requesting new reviews. So have a process in place at the firm to make sure that you're, every time a case closes or you're reaching out immediately to get that review. And then you can really measure the success from it based on how that's impacting the firm as a whole. And I just created this little model that shows you kind of what the impact has. Pretty simple. You get more reviews. You're going to get more visibility in Google. You're going to get more referrals. And in turn, you're going to get more clients and more revenue for the firm. And those clients will then refer you because they'll be happy and you'll get another review, and the process just keeps going. So reviews are just so important. And then I'm just going to touch on lead gen. I know we're running out of time and we have questions in the chat. So lead gen can really be broken down into Google and legal directories. So I'll just jump into Google PPC, pay-per-click is exactly what it is. These you pay Google, and it looks like this, sponsored at the top of the page, to show up at the top, and you pay per click. And Google has each click is a different cost. So like personal injury in downtown Atlanta is going to cost 10 times more than personal injury in Portage, Wisconsin. So they really, based on how saturated the environment is for those keywords, the cost obviously goes up. Working with a strategist is super important with Google Ads. I would not recommend anyone ever trying to do this themselves. You can really waste a lot of money unless you've done some serious training on it. Legal directories, examples are Super Lawyers, Justia, FindLaw, Avo. I always recommend claim these profiles. A lot of them are free, Justia, Avo. You can get a free basic one from FindLaw. These are valuable for 3 reasons. They are really good for SEO. These are typically premium publishers, which means they send really good signals to the search engines about the authority of your website. They're great for lead generation, and they're good for reputation management. So when you claim them and optimize them with relevant information about you and get reviews here, they will show up when somebody searches you specifically. So if somebody gets a referral and searches you, that will show up in what we call a vanity search or a branded search. And, okay, sorry, I went past this. Google local service ads are newer in the last couple of years to the legal industry. These are the ads that show up at the top now with the picture, and they say Google screened. You have to go through a screening process to be able to purchase these ads, and these are pay per lead. Something to keep in mind with these ads is Google does screen the calls. So they record the calls and verify with their AI technology whether the call was like a verified lead, and they charge you based on the lead value. You can dispute them. If you want to know more information on this, I know we did send out the deck, but I do have a case study with Clio and a webinar that might be interesting to you if you want to learn more about that. Okay, and then AI. Probably shouldn't have saved AI for the very end, but again, I mean, I could talk for an entire day on AI. I did include an article that we recently published in Pennsylvania on AI in the legal industry. I encourage you to read that. And then our AI webinar that we did with Spencer X. Smith a few months ago is really valuable. Obviously, since AI came out in 2023, or ChatGPT, it has every day, I feel like we get alerts on new features that you can use. Just caution, it's not always accurate, especially with case studies and legal information. So I really caution you to use it as a tool for brainstorming and getting out of like writer's block more than anything at this point, especially if you're using Google's Bard. It's still like an experiment phase, but it does crawl the internet. So does ChatGPT now. But we, as a digital marketing company, have found lots of inaccuracies with using these and trusting the information. So it's great for brainstorming and idea gathering. And the AI webinar that's included here has lots of different ways to prompt the ChatGPT to get the information that you want. And if you pay the extra $20 a month for ChatGPT 4, you can actually change the tone of the person writing it. So it's kind of cool. So there's lots of other features in ChatGPT 4 that are interesting. So
Yeah, I think Lindsay, thank you. That was great. And we do have just one question. It looks like one person answered their own question, but the one question that's in the Q&A says, in a recent discussion with attorneys in another seminar, one attorney saw no problem with responding to a negative review by saying, "You didn't pay my fees, and that's why you're unhappy." And the writer suggests that that would run afoul of a lawyer's ethical obligations for a couple of reasons. And I think I agree with the writer. I think the closer you come, and in fact, this one seems to have gone over the line, that you reveal, that you even represented the person in the first instance, is probably one of those no-nos. And so important not to get into the weeds of the representation, including whether or not bills were paid, but rather a stock sort of answer, which says, I can't acknowledge any sort of attorney-client relationship in this forum. If you were a client of mine, please feel free to contact us directly so that we can discuss further. Something like that, because then you have, at least met what Google wants you to do, and that is to respond, to those kinds of reviews, good, bad, or otherwise. But you've also preserved.
I would encourage, when writing responses to the reviews, keep in mind that your potential clients are reading these. Mm-hmm. And your response, if it's not professional, they're less likely to call you.
Great point. Okay, and then in our last minute here, we did ask the question to bot or not to bot. And I guess I'll give my answer, and that is just be careful. Learn as much as you can about AI. Lindsay offered a program. WILMIC has a program on its YouTube channel that talks about some of the ethical considerations related to AI. There are a lot of articles. Chris Shattuck, Aviva Kaiser, Brent Haft, all at the State Bar, have either presented or written articles on this topic. And just remember that no matter what sort of bot you use, it's a misnomer, but it's described as hallucinate. And AI doesn't hallucinate, it just makes stuff up. And so be careful about which AI tools you use. Lindsay mentioned, the ChatGPT and Bard and others. Pay attention to what legal resources are now using AI to develop more useful tools for lawyers, like LexisNexis AI and others, where they sort of close the back door on what sort of searches you're able to do and what sort of responses you're able to get. So all of those things, I think, are useful if they're used in the right way. And I think eventually AI is not going to result in the next Terminator movie where machines try to take over the world, but we're just going to stay ahead of it as human beings and figure out how to use it efficiently and effectively. So with that, Lindsay, I think we've exhausted our hour. And I want to thank you again to you and to Above the Bar for putting together an excellent presentation on digital marketing. And we will have this recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel for later viewing. And I want to thank everybody in the audience for their participation and attendance. Have a great afternoon.